Okay, so welcome everybody to today's security webcast for single sign-on. Today we have Madhu and her with us from product management, and they're going to be giving us a quick recap of CA SSO 12.6 and a peek ahead into what is in store with the 12.7 release. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Madhu.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. First of all, appreciate you being here. Let me take a few seconds to introduce myself. I'm Madhu Yoganath, Senior Principal Product Owner with the CA SSO team. I have with me on the bridge Mehlhorn, Senior Director Product Management for CA SSO. We have about 45 minutes, I think, to walk through the following content. I'd like to reiterate the product's value proposition, start off with the broader vision of the product for benefit of new customers, followed by a quick recap for 12.6 release, basically the value of the release and the components that were released with 12.6, and business needs that were addressed with these new capabilities. And then we can take a sneak peek into 12.7 release, where I will present the ongoing work that's available for you to validate on the validation.ca.com, and then we can have the Q&A. I'll give a couple of seconds to for you to glance through the disclaimer. So most of you are familiar with the fundamental value proposition of the product, right? While CA SSO not only enables a centralized layer of access management to secure your application train, it also promotes usability and increased productivity. And that's natural effect of eliminating multiple sign-ons per day, and then also eliminating password lockouts and the reset queries that support get, which results in the decrease in IT costs. We have a very large customer base, and the product has stood the test of times over decades, and by our customers across diverse set of verticals. So our goal is, is to continue to be the leading provider of access management solution by continuously modernizing our architecture. Access management is a very evolving space, and so we need to build continuous support for newer open standards and for easy adoption and rapid time to value for our customers. This is the highlight, which basically talks about the key aspects of single sign-on capabilities. We support various forms of authentication. We enable administrators to control when and how and who to grant access to resources. Product ensures that users are not only signed with an appropriate authentication level defined for their role, but also dynamically step up authentication based on the risk level. And we have the session assurance with device DNA capability, which prevent unauthorized users from hijacking legitimate session with stolen cookies. The centralized administration aspect enables Web SSO as well, and centrally managed sessions and access policies for any applications. Now, this is true for both scenarios, be it creating policies at the URL level for applications that don't use open standards, or leveraging the open standards such as SAML OAuth to enable single sign-on for applications which support these standards. The product is designed to provide architectural flexibility with both the reverse proxy gateway mode and an agent-based deployment option. So the customers can choose the model appropriate for their environment. And typically, we have a policy administration point, which is the administrative UI. We have the policy enforcement points. I'm talking about agents or access gateway. Agents are available for a wide range of application environments, and the access gateway itself enables integration with applications and is one of the main integration components for SSO into Saas applications. Now, there's a policy decision point, which is a policy server primarily, and the extensive caching support that enables many decisions without having to call back to policy server also exists. We have the SDKs and REST interface for extending CA SSO's authentication methods, agents, and policy management. The open format cookie, which is a lighter form of accomplishing SSO that does not require as much security as you might use agents for. Now, all of these above components can be run on-premise or in private cloud environments like AWS. So these are capabilities. There are other compelling capabilities within the product to help the customers implement SSO in a highly secure way and thereby realize the product value in aggregate. We are pleased to point you to the Kappinger-Cole report for access management, which has rated CA as a leader in all the aspects, which include product leadership, market, and innovative leadership. We encourage you to download this report and review the content. So the guiding principle for our features in our roadmap are to meet our technology and architectural goals. The technology goal is, basically providing a broad platform support, application support, both on-prem and off-prem usage and standard support. So more applications to access for your consumers or employees, reducing TCO, continuing to look to ways of improving the overall security posture. Of course, talking about scalability, we have our product supporting, billions of transactions. I think about 3 billion transactions per month in some customer cases, thousands of applications controlled via CA SSO. And given that private clouds and public clouds have begun to gain dominance, this is one of our focus areas for us to develop capabilities for better delivery of our services within the cloud. So, 12.6.1, this was released in November 2016. We provided federation-related enhancements, improved UI performance, 64-bit platform support, resulting in improved performance and product resiliency. The components that were released in 12.6 were SSO admin UI, policy server, access gateway. There were no new release of web agents here. So with the newer version of policy server, we continue to support the backward compatibility with the old agents. In the area of federation, we made it simpler for entering secondary verification certificate to basically simplify certification management, allowing seamless change in the use of certification and keys and updation of certificates. So it's easy to manage federation partnerships in a scalable way. There's another feature that we provided when CA SSO is implemented as a service provider, which was to support ACS URL when which tells the identity provider as to where the SAML response can be posted. So this adds additional security to revalidate the ACS URL on the IDP side when that is already configured out of the band. Another feature was to provide support for dynamic authentication. Multiple authentication levels based on the need of the context. So adding support for attribute consuming service here, basically it's very specific to restricting the response assertions which might just need specific user attributes. So it specifies an index of the attribute group that SP side application requires from the identity provider. So IDP just provides the necessary attributes. And when it came to management enhancements, we have a CA remote engineer, which is a tool, so diagnostic and a data gathering utility, which was shipped with SSO, collects the required telemetry and SFTPs the logs to support side. And we also improved on the log rotation. We have some features for object searching, ACO search within the admin UI. So the focus was towards accelerated troubleshooting, improved ability to capture critical data for troubleshooting, reduces cost, and simplifies management of SSO agent configuration. When it came to platform enhancements, the admin UI, we had Java on .8 support, and of course the 64-bit support for admin UI itself. PS, we had a whole lot of features here for simpler installation and configuration of enhanced session assurance, improved performance. We improved the session store algorithm. If you're using advanced auth, you can maintain the risk factor in the session store and also maintain the incoming SAML assertion in the session store. We had elements of other diagnostics. The CA SSO gateway, we provided better support for Safari browsers in Office 365 implementations. We also added support for post-preservation flows for enhanced session assurance. Well, the good news is, of course, you should expect a significant performance boost, especially if you're running the platform components on RHEL 6. And what you see on the screen is specifically with respect to the lab environments that we saw, and it can vary for your environments. And if you have any custom code today, it should be compiled for 64-bit environments. Now, going on to 12.7 and forward, and the other items that we have on our roadmap today. Not sure how many of you know, but we have adopted the scaled Agile framework model for some time now, and so the goal is to have continuous customer collaboration and involvement. We want your participation, very active participation in communities, and then the validation program. So we'll keep you updated with all the validation kits as and when we make them available, and also participate in. We want you to participate in the idea and in responding to our NPS surveys and contributing to the ideas of the product as well. So important thing here is to the Agile framework helps us to really respond to change and then have a continuous customer collaboration and involvement. Now moving to the features available in 12.7 validation kit. So we added support for REST API for management of policy data and federation management. So this provides the capability for DevOps kind of an environment to programmatically manage the policy data operations. REST has been, it's a few years, it's really caught on as a way of designing services with less dependence on proprietary middleware, and we want to help you to meet integration requirements that are critical to your DevOps aspects. So the other features of high value that we have in our backlog that we are working on are focused on simplifying the deployment, providing out-of-the-box support for Docker images for SSO components. In fact, today, many of our customers are actually using CA SSO in cloud platforms and even PaaS platforms. A little more on the REST API feature. There's a video on the validation site which walks through a lot of examples. In fact, with the Swagger documentation, Swagger is a popular open source framework and can be used to explore the services. Basically, the policy data endpoint, which helps implement operations, get, post, put, delete operations for managing policy data, and the policy objects are returned in JSON format. I mean, you can find a whole lot of other details in the video and the validation site with a lot of documentation around this. And VAM UI, so the services are actually in the VAM UI server, so it leverages the policy server connection that the VAM UI utilizes for its communication. We also have REST APIs for migrating of policy objects across environments, so the upgrade can be, the goal is to make upgrades smoother, and also for management of federated partnerships. Again, I encourage you to please visit validate.ca.com, where you can find a lot of documentation and also videos around the same. Another exciting feature is we have now support for OpenID Connect, and CA SSO can now act as an OpenID Connect provider. So OpenID Connect support should help the applications with faster user onboarding, with lesser onboarding steps, and a whole lot of other features that come with supporting OpenID Connect. As part of this implementation, we have implemented a number of endpoints like user info, access token endpoint, revoke access, so all the endpoints that are needed for the basic authorization flow that is currently supported. And we continue to add more support as we take this up in our ongoing sprints. Again, this is available on the validate.ca.com. Please encourage you to take this, download the kit, and then play with it, and then give us your feedback. Another feature was that you see on the screen that you also have on the validation kit is the enhanced web app client response. Basically, this is we just brought in the support for JSON and XML applications that don't use HTTP as a transport protocol. In the context of web applications, there are script engines which execute and then which request resources and display content, and these requests can trigger agent-generated behavior. So the enhancement allows the agent to send a customized response format in either JSON or XML. And of course, we are looking to provide support for native JOT token format in CA SSO, as an important thing on our roadmap. So IWA fallback to forms is one of the top voted items on the community side, and one of the examples on how we took this we productized the feature that was requested here, which was a very important use case for several of our customers Windows Authentication Scheme, it works great when users are actually in the internet, and in a lot of scenarios where IWA cannot be enforced, so administrators had to define another policy to define a form-based authentication. And today, that configuration is much more simpler. We have introduced a new authentication scheme called auth chaining. It allows an administrator to chain different authentication modules to behave as a single authority. So currently, CA SSO supports only IWA fallback to forms-based authentication scheme, but this can be extended. The same auth scheme can be extended based on, to other authentication forms, authentication schemes, as and when we see the demand for such a use case. So other smaller features that we added in the validation kit, improved user experience. So if you are using RSA Secure ID authentication scheme in your environments today, this is very specifically to user generating new PIN workflow, which we have made the user experience we have improved the user experience there. And then there's a new FCC template that's available as part of this feature. If you're using Kerberos constraint delegation in your environments today, so SSO policy server is now going to honor it with this support. And the other feature is about if we have a user disabled natively at the service provider side, but the user is, although he may be still active in the identity provider side, the user will be denied access. There's a new configurable parameter within the policy server on the SP side where you can set, we can set this flag, and then any user who's disabled natively at SP will not be able to access any of the application, thereby enhancing the security. So this is our broader ecosystem, and CA SSO supports integration with various other products like CA Risk Authentication, CA API Management, CA Identity Service, and CA Identity Suite. So CA Identity Services are turnkey identity as a service offering for full identity lifecycle management, user provisioning, and account reconciliation. You can basically, the integration between CSSO and Saas is going to provide more value in terms of scaling SSO to Saas, and especially, so you're basically to improve your time to value and reduce your cost in managing a hybrid environment. So by offloading Saas app onboarding to identity service, you can keep your valuable time focused on advanced CA use cases. So you actually have a single launchpad where you can have your users both access Saas as well as on-prem applications and have a better experience. So the other highly valuable capability that we're looking to bring into product sooner and which is very relevant today, is to help improve application security. And is through analytics, threat analytics capability. The goal is to provide visibility into spotting anomalous and fraudulent behavior, basically by applying a lot of proprietary machine learning techniques on the usage data, and help organization uncover a lot of unwanted incidents or anything. So basically the goal is to provide deep insight into organizations' security posture by providing them a lot of context around the user behavior and helping them answer some key questions around, about any action that looks abnormal or any action that matches the behavior that, matches the behavior patterns of peers, which is not matching the behavior patterns of peers, etc. And why we actually want to post the mock-up screens and validate screen as when we discover some of these use cases, so we can engage your feedback in a much continued fashion. So there's another external peer-reviewed website called IT Central Station, where your peers have provided us feedback, and we are ranked #1. This is the most recent screenshot. We encourage you to take a look at that. And this is something that I'd like to stress a lot because going forward, we'll engage with you more and more on the validation side, and we want you to download them, provide us concrete feedback and timely feedback, and of course vote and comment on ideas that are very important to you. And we continuously review these ideas and update the status and as they move through the life cycle. So I think we can cover more and make it more interactive with the Q&A at this point. So I'm not. So Chris, do we have any questions on the chat?
Folks, you can ask your questions through the Q&A tab. There are some questions coming in. Please make sure that you ask them to everyone so that everyone can see them and we can respond. And we have Herb on.
Yeah, hey Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, yeah, Chris and Madhu, thanks for that. Yes, I'm here as well.
So, okay, why don't I go ahead and start reading the questions here, and you guys know the product better, so you'll be able to clarify some of these, obviously. From Rich, I have a customer who's reluctant to adopt 12.6 since its first release of 64-bit code on Linux. Do we have any quality data available cases, number of cases, severity, whatever, that assuages the concern of being on the bleeding edge?
Madhu, I'll take a shot at that. So, no, there's no specific, data that we would have that talks about, any sort of, near-term view of any defects that might be in the product, other than, obviously, as we go forward, we'll end up with customers making use of it and adopting the solution. If there are issues, they will raise them, we'll turn them around and address them. I think fundamentally, from a release-to-release perspective, with the adoption of Agile, the overall quality of the product continues to make improvements. And I know already of a number of organizations who have adopted and are using 12.6 in production. And I know there are obviously a number of organizations that have different policies about what they use and how they adopt it. I will make one additional commentary, which was the 12.6 release has essentially already had a single service pack released, which was a service pack that had some defects addressed. I think there might have been less than a dozen, maybe some close to a single-digit number. So, I understand people want to test and make sure that the solution will work as they expect. I think from our side, we have, a higher level of confidence that the quality continues to be improved over time, and the Agile approach helps drive that. For those that aren't familiar with Agile, it has a very strong test regimen associated with the execution and the promotion of code within the release, within the code stream and the release itself. So you should have confidence. Always test, obviously, in your dev to test to production process, but you should have confidence it's a release of high quality.
Okay, thanks, sir. Daniel asked, when do you think that feature will be available? Looks like he's referring to OP and OAuth 2.
Madhu, would you like me to tackle that, or do you want to tackle that?
No, you can go ahead, Herb.
Oh, sure. Okay, so in the federation use cases, there are a number of different types of protocols that are possible to be used. One of them is SAML, one of them is WS Federation. There's a sort of this combined building blocks of protocols, OAuth underneath, OpenID Connect on top. But the fundamental use case that we're delivering in the next release is going to be the support of the ability to execute a federated single sign-on to a web-based application using an OpenID Connect token. And there, in SAML language, the two ends of the communication pipe are the IDP side and the SP side. Similar kind of federated transaction takes place with OpenID Connect, but instead of calling it an IDP, they call it an OP. And that means basically you're an OpenID Connect provider. You can mint OpenID Connect tokens for the purpose of asserting a user's identity to a web application. That's part of the validation code base that we have available, and I know Madhu has referred to it a couple times, validate.ca.com. So that's available to be tested now, and this sort of sneak peek is an element of the roadmap that we're sharing with you. And as we get towards the end of the project, you'll be able to get a sense of that because the code base will essentially be in an almost final format on validate.ca.com, and we'll be running towards getting any final feedback from customers on their experience, and that's sort of a signal that the release is approaching pretty quickly. Our expectation is that we will be driving towards that process, and it will be pretty visible in validate.ca.com. But again, for anybody who has interest, you can sign up and download a set of builds that show that today, and you'll see it in its pretty complete form.
Okay, and Jim asked, is directory mapping support planned for Federation partnerships?
As indicated on the slides, this now has sort of evolved into one of the highest voted items in the backlog. I think, if I'm right, and I might be wrong on this, Madhu, but again, just roughly, I think that now probably has 60 to 70 different votes associated with it, representing input from individuals in our customer base. So our intention is to continue to sort of, through the Agile process, the concept is you tee up your backlog in priority order, and the engineering team keeps trying to pick things off that backlog and execute and deliver them, and then we keep the releases running on time. So highly likely that you will see additional identity mapping capabilities for Federation use cases in a release. Not the absolute next release, but you will see it coming because, again, we'll maintain that as part of the backlog. The customers in aggregate are telling us about the level of priority they feel about that, and our intent will be to deliver that. So the answer in a sort of broad way is yes, the timing of that will be more visible as we go along and show our development work and our execution against that in that validation website.
Okay, Herb, do you see the ones from Kalidar?
I do not.
Okay, I'm going to try and get these as best I can.
Sure.
What are grant types supported by OAuth Authorization Server in 12.7, question mark?
So this is sort of a basic authorization flow that we're providing within 12.7. And again, the fundamental use case is, hey, I want to use this token as a way to gain access to an application environment like, Apache with a mod OIDC on it, or a application running in, say, a WebSphere Liberty environment. I think can natively support OpenID Connect. So it's an authorization grant flow.
Let's see, and then he asks, will the OAuth implementation support PKCE, proof of possession of bearer tokens? And what are flows supported in OIDC implementation? AZ code, implicit, hybrid, question mark.
Yeah, so I answered the OIDC part of that in my last response. On the PKCE side, I'm not 100% certain. I'd have to go take that one offline to double check.
Let's see. What are flows supported in OIDC implementation? I think he asked this, Ron.
Yeah.
Will OIDC OAuth implementation still deal with SiteMinder cookies, enabling seamless sign-in agent-based protected one and open standard implementations with OAuth OIDC?
Yeah, so the broader lensed answer to that question is, within SSO today, you can sort of come into the system, if you will, with one form of authentication and go out of the system with another form of identity token. So I think many of you may be aware, you know, you may authenticate with a username and password, and then you hit an application that needs a SAML assertion, and underneath the covers, you know, SSO will do the right thing to generate that SAML assertion and then push it over to the requiring application. This is true, in essence, what we're adding to the picture here is the ability to do that with OIDC as well. So you may come in with a SAML assertion and need an OIDC out the other side. You may come in with an X509 certificate and need an OIDC token out the other side to get to the targeted application. So the intent is that depending on what authentication you're using and what application you're trying to get to, because SSO is playing the broker to help get you there and apply a common set of authorization decisions in making that decision, you know, we'll make the transformation as necessary to get you to the right application. Our intent is to make sure that if that application requires an OIDC token, that you can use that. So yeah, in some use cases, SM Session will be in the mix. In some use cases, SM Session might not be in the mix. Our intent, again, is to provide that layer of single sign-on, again, for the most part, primarily between an end user who's using a browser on some device, and they're trying to get to some end application with a set of resources available to them. And again, you know, in some instances, they may need a SAML assertion. In other instances, they may need an SM Session. In other instances, they may need an OIDC token. In other instances, although this has now become almost not essential, you know, they may have historically, again, not so essential anymore, use a WS-Fed token. So that's the backdrop, and the kind of environments where we see our implementation as an ability to produce an OpenID Connect token. Again, that's fundamentally going to be based on, you know, a browser-based web use case where a user is trying to get to an application running on WebSphere at Liberty, for example. So I hope that answered that question.
Okay. And Ram asked, is analytics built-in feature, or do we need to have CA APM to do that?
Okay, all right, interesting question. And I understand sort of the thought pattern that raised that question. So APM is very much a performance management tool. And in other words, APM will help tell you things like, you know, am I getting into a problem where, you know, the volume of transactions is getting larger than the ability for the system to support that? So APM's focus has primarily been around trying to help people have an ability to see, you know, the performance characteristics of the system and you know, maintain understanding of that. The threat analytics part of our roadmap, which is not a statement of functionality that exists today, but it's a statement of what we have in our backlog as items we might deliver in the future, is really based on the fact that SSO, you know, is a key, again, broker is sort of a hard word, but is a key layer for access decisions. Well, there's a whole lot of really valuable information that, you know, is captured and maintained and provided through, you know, audit logs. And the opportunity here now is to take that and wire it up to a behavioral analysis engine that can start giving back information about whether the behavior that is being witnessed in the course of a user session is risky behavior. Is it unusual? Is it anomalous? So they're taking, you know, information conceptually, again, from SSO, but for very different purposes. One is purely around sort of system performance. That's the APM product set that already exists and does integrate with CA SSO 12.6. The behavioral analytics slide is about a potential future that we are investigating and working on. We do have sort of a behavioral engine within the security business unit here at CA, and as a backdrop, you may or may not be a user of our privileged access management system. That privileged access management system for things like system accounts has been wired up to use the behavioral engine, and so we're considering how we might do that as well in our roadmap with SSO. So again, different tools for different purposes, and I hope that clarified that.
Okay, Daniel asked, do you have in the roadmap to give a virtual like IDS or PAM?
Can you say that one again, Chris? A virtual something? There was just a little bit of...
Yeah, do you have in the roadmap to give a virtual appliance like IDS or PAM?
Oh, IDS or PAM. I got you. I now heard that. Yeah, in fact, on that backlog side, you probably saw the Docker image, and so, yeah, our intent is to make it easier to deploy and install and manage by providing a containerized instance of the sort of the server side of our implementation, but also the enforcement side of our implementation, which typically, you know, comes in the form of things like agents and the access gateway, previously called secure proxy server. So the answer to the question is yes. The thing that's probably easier to just conceptually visualize in the slides that Madhu went through is that those parts of those slides represent a combination of work that is either underway or high on the backlog list. The ones that are most closest to the point of being completed are the ones that were ending up sort of being boxed in blue dotted lines. And so that'll give you a sense that the items that are in blue dotted line, that were in the blue dotted lines that Madhu was commenting on, are the things that are most close to a point to becoming available and that you could actually sort of touch and feel by downloading the build that's on validate.ca.com. And the other ones are items that are high up that priority list that we're perhaps building some design around already or doing proof of concepts around, but are not yet close to GA. And what I mean by close is, you know, within the next 6 months. Let's just use that as sort of the rough horizon of time frame. So I hope that helped.
Okay, Herb, I sent you the next one. Do you see that on IM?
This one must be in a whole different language. With 12.6 being 64-bit, will its associated custom module be available, SMWalk or override auth? Yes. The answer to that question is, well, actually, you know what? There's a part of this that I am not 100% certain on. So I was going to say yes immediately, but then I thought better of that because there's a piece of the question that I'm not entirely sure. So let me tell you where I was going, and then again, I think there's some of these that will have to be some sort of follow-up. I think for the ones that we mentioned as a follow-up, what I'd like to do is see if there's a way to provide the opportunity for people, if we don't have an ability to capture this, Chris, but provide an opportunity for people to send it in via email and we can get back directly to the person who's requesting it. But So the quick answer is there are two dimensions to the use of these tools with 12.6. One is, hey, is there a version of SM Walker that's been certified and tested to work with 12.6? The answer to that is yes. Is that custom module itself a 64-bit implementation? That I'm not 100% certain on. So let's do this. Two things. One, the last item in that list, there are three items in there. There's SM Walker, SM Override Off, and Session Linker. So there's a native Session Linker functionality that's in CA SSO. It doesn't require a custom module. And for that piece, yes, there is a 64-bit implementation of that. And so that third one in that stringed list, if you will, the answer is definitely yes. There's one that works with 12.6 and is 64-bit. The SM Walker piece, there's definitely an SM Walker implementation that has been tested and certified with 12.6, but I don't know off the top of my head if it is a 64-bit executable itself. And SM Override Off, that's one I'd really have to take offline because it isn't one that jumps to the top of my memory stack here in terms of where it exists and whether it's been one of the top dozen or so of these that have been tested with SSO. I should know that answer, but my memory doesn't have it right immediately at my fingertips.
That's okay. We'll capture this information and to be able to get an email address for the person that asked the question. We could respond.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let's see. Last one here. So far, will there be a new SDK for 12.7?
Will there be a new SDK for 12.7? Well, in some respects, the answer is definitely yes, but perhaps not in the way people are thinking about it. As Madhu indicated, in 12.7, there are some new REST interfaces that will be available. So whether you call that an SDK or not, I think the intent behind the question related to SDK might be, hey, are there some changes in interfaces that are coming with 12.7? And the answer to that is yes. There are going to be a set of REST interfaces with associated Swagger content that are about the ability to create, update, delete policy objects within the policy store at a granular level, but there are also going to be summary level REST interfaces for with a small number of calls, in essence, being able to create, update, and delete federated partnerships. So you can start doing more and more from a DevOps perspective using REST as the interface to accomplish your end result with SSO starting with 12.7, and you'll see that get built out as we go further out into the future.
Okay. We've had some folks ask about the recording. The recording will be posted on the site when it's available. We have to convert it and upload it, so usually should be by end of day tomorrow or first of next week. Also, anyone who joined today, we will be sending out a link to the recording as well in the recap to you by email, so you'll have it there as well. There is one more question here from Seren. In the new releases, can we expect SiteMinder test tool for Linux OS?
And I know the answer to that question. The answer is no, and I know there are lots of people who have asked about this. And again, just to be completely transparent about the state of the world today, the answer is no. But I do acknowledge and understand the value if we were to do that. I can't say any more right this minute.
Okay. Let's see. Any more questions out there? Again, you can utilize the Q&A tab. Be sure to ask your question to everyone. I'll give it another minute here. We do have a poll up, folks, so before you go, do give us a rating on how you felt about today's webcast. It helps us for future webcasts.
Yeah, and one key additional point I'd make, and I know, Madhu, you and I think are collectively on this page, which is and I recognize that, everybody has a full plate of things to do on a regular daily basis. I think that's just a statement of the world today. But the thing that I think we collectively, you know, folks here on the phone as well as people here on this side of the microphone as well, will end up achieving, you know, greater value with as much or as little, but if there's a little bit that could be spared for, you know, taking some of those, you know, participating in some of that validation activity, we certainly want people to take a look at what we're doing, give us feedback. We can't always adjust to exactly what you'd like, and that's a, you know, we're hoping that by engaging earlier and earlier in the process where we can make some course corrections will just result in better results for everybody. And so, you know, that validate.ca.com is, you know, conceptually open 7 by 24 by 365, and the evolution of ideas that we have, designs that we are starting to play around with, and code that we can start showing you gives you an opportunity to plug in and give us commentary and feedback on some of those things. And again, with the overall goal and intention of the end result being much more consumable and valuable for you. So that's my last advertisement for that, but I did want to try to slip it in under the wire.
No, thank you, Herb. That's really helpful. There are a whole lot of forums which are waiting out there for the feedback, and we'd love some real feedback there.
Okay, guys, we don't have any more questions in the Q&A. So at this point, so go ahead and thank Madhu and Herb, and thank everyone for participating today. Again, we will be posting the recording once it's available up to the site, and also folks who joined today will get an email with the link to the recording as well. So with that, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.